Iran's actions on Karg Island are a serious escalation.
We are responding to foreign provocations. Our actions are defensive.
This will impact global oil markets and trigger a response.
21 hours, that's how long America's best? Negotiators sat across the table from Iran and walked away with nothing. The peace talks in Islamabad have collapsed. The U.S. delegation is leaving Pakistan, and President Trump is now warning the world the military machine is warming back up. This is day 43 of a war that has already shaken the global economy, rattled oil markets, and dragged in Russia and China. And today, we are standing on the edge of something far worse. Welcome back. I'm bringing you the most complete breakdown of where this conflict stands right now, and more importantly, what the United States is preparing to do next. We're going to walk through the failed Islamabad talks, the exact demands America put on the table, why Iran rejected them, and critically, what Washington's next steps look like. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button because this story is evolving every single hour. Let's begin. For 21 consecutive hours through the night and into Saturday morning, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance led a high-level delegation in direct, face-to-face negotiations with Iranian officials. This was not a back-channel conversation. This was the real thing, the closest. The two sides have come to a formal resolution since fighting began, and then it fell apart. Vance emerged and delivered a blunt statement. Iran rejected America's terms. He was specific. The core issue was nuclear. The United States demanded a long-term verifiable commitment that Iran would abandon nuclear weapons development entirely and permanently, no exceptions, no gray areas. Iran's response, they called the demands excessive and unlawful. Tehran's state media framed it as Washington overreaching, trying to dictate not just military conduct, but the very future of Iran's sovereignty as a nation. Iranian officials hinted the talks might continue into Sunday, but here's what the cameras didn't capture. U.S. negotiators were already packing their bags and heading to the airport. That tells you everything you need to know about how Washington read the room. So what exactly did America put on the table? Reports indicate the U.S. presented what insiders are calling a 15-point ultimatum versus Iran's counterproposal of just 10 points. The gap between those two documents is the gap between a deal and a war. Point 1, nuclear disarmament. America wants Iran's enriched uranium stockpiles reduced, its nuclear infrastructure partially dismantled, and a permanent pledge against pursuing a nuclear weapon. Vance made clear there is zero flexibility on this point. 0.2, the Strait of Hormuz, this narrow waterway, carries roughly 20% of the world's oil supply. Iran has been using it as leverage, imposing fees, threatening blockages. The U.S. demanded full unrestricted reopening with no Iranian authority to control international shipping. Point 3, regional ceasefire and proxy withdrawal. America wants Iran to cut off support to Hezbollah in Lebanon and accept a halt to Israeli strikes in the region as part of a broader Middle East truce. Point 4, no reparations. The United States refused to pay or acknowledge any financial obligation to Iran as part of any deal. Tehran responded with its own framework, less demanding, more focused on mutual de-escalation, but the two positions were simply too far apart. Now here is where this story stops being about two countries and starts being about the entire world order. U.S. intelligence has confirmed that Russia is actively supplying Iran with satellite imagery, real-time surveillance data that gives Iranian forces a significant battlefield advantage. Moscow is also providing what officials call non-lethal aid supplies, logistics, and support that stop just short of direct weapons transfers. And then there's China. American intelligence officials are now warning that Beijing may be on the verge of authorizing missile shipments to Iran, not satellite data, not food rations, missiles. If that happens, this war transforms overnight. Iran, already one of the most heavily armed nations in the region, would receive a substantial upgrade in its ability to strike U.S. naval assets, American bases in the Gulf, and potentially Israeli territory. The White House is watching Beijing's decision closely, and it is factoring into every calculation about what comes next. So what happens now? What does America actually do next? President Trump has already telegraphed his position. He warned publicly that if no agreement is reached, the United States will resume intensified military action. This is not a bluff. U.S. warships are already positioned in the region, armed and prepared. Step 1, aerial campaign intensification. The U.S. Air Force and naval aviation assets will almost certainly increase. Strike operations targeting Iranian military infrastructure, radar installations, missile batteries, command and control facilities. Step 2, naval enforcement of the Strait. Expect U.S. carrier groups to begin active enforcement operations, escorting commercial vessels, intercepting Iranian patrol boats, and establishing a de facto maritime exclusion zone. Step 3, sanctions escalation and allied coordination. Washington is expected to push allied nations, particularly in Europe and the Gulf, to tighten the economic vice around Iran's oil exports and banking system. Step 4, the China ultimatum. If Beijing proceeds with missile shipments, senior Officials have hinted at secondary sanctions targeting Chinese financial institutions and technology firms that support Iran. This would represent a dramatic escalation in US-China tensions at a moment when both economies can ill afford it. Day 43 talks have failed, warships are ready, and the world is watching two nuclear-adjacent powers decide whether words or weapons will define what comes next. We will be covering every development as it breaks, the military movements, the diplomatic back channels, and the decisions being made in Washington, Tehran, Moscow, and Beijing that will shape the next chapter of this conflict. If this coverage gave you clarity, share it, because in a world drowning in noise, accurate information is the most important thing we can offer each other. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay with us. History doesn't pause, and neither do we.